a great privilege to be associated with your efforts to bring democracy and freedom to Iran. First, I would like to pay my sincerest condolences to all those who laid down their lives 1 year ago during the November 19 uprising that took place across Iran in more than 190 cities and in all 31 provinces. These individuals sacrificed their lives in a righteous cause. The initial spark for the protests may have been an increase in gasoline prices, but your grievances are far larger and more significant. They address the very nature of the illegitimate regime in Tehran itself. These protests took place because the Iranian people only wish what people all over the world wish for: the basic human right to live in freedom, to raise your family without fear, to elect honest officials who will represent your best interests and not steal from you, and to live a life of dignity. You and your colleagues all over Iran have made it clear that you want to change from this illegitimate regime. Nationwide protests were a way to show this regime and the world that your cause is just and that you will prevail. Your courage and bravery in the face of the regime's violence and repression is inspiring. At least 1,500 protesters were massacred on the streets. Over 4,000 were wounded and at least 12,000 arrested. The New York Times reported that the IRGC and other security forces committed mass atrocities by using deadly force against unarmed civilians. The UN Commissioner for Human Rights stated that the regime violated international law and engaged in serious violations of human rights. What does all this tell us? It tells us that this is a regime that once more revealed its true nature and how it responded to the protests. This is a regime that is fundamentally weak and unsure of itself, not strong and self-confident. This is a regime that does not respect the lives of its own citizens. This is a regime that does not trust its own citizens to know the truth. This is a regime that resorts to violence to silence the voices of the people. This is a regime that blames others for its own failures. This is a regime that is corrupt and a massive violator of human rights. This is a regime that is irreformable and incapable of serving the people of Iran. This is a regime that fears its own people. Above all, this is a regime that fears the MEK and what it stands for. This is a regime that fears Madame Rajavi especially and her 10-point plan to bring democracy, true representative government, and the rule of law to Iran. In addition, this is a regime that has grossly mismanaged the COVID-19 pandemic. Initially, the mullahs denied and covered up the extent of the pandemic, losing valuable time and ensuring that more Iranians would suffer and die. Their subsequent incompetence in dealing with the crisis is stunning. According to Johns Hopkins University, almost 700,000 Iranians have been infected and tens of thousands have died. And there are no signs that the mullahs have learned how to do better over time. Just this past Saturday, we saw a new daily record with almost 10,000 new people infected with the virus. It's useful to reflect back on trends and developments over the past few years and what they suggest for the struggle between the Iranian people and the ruling theocracy in Tehran. From my perspective, the forces of freedom are gaining strength, both inside and outside Iran, while the forces of repression are weakening. Consider this. Only a few short years ago, members of the MEK were isolated at Camp Ashraf and under attack from the mullah's allies. Today, these brave men and women are safely in Albania. Only a few short years ago, the regime in Tehran tried to blow up a peaceful gathering of the opposition in Paris. The terrorists were apprehended before they could strike. They are now on trial for the entire world to see once more that the regime in Tehran does not hesitate to use terror to silence its enemies, even on European soil. Today, Iran's economy is in tatters, undergoing a third consecutive year of recession. According to the World Bank, the country's real gross domestic product contracted by almost 7% over the past 2 years, with revenues from oil falling by almost 40%. The accumulation of economic sanctions, along with the ongoing impact of COVID-19, means that the economy is projected to decrease by another 4.5% this coming year. Inflation has accelerated, placing even more pressure on vulnerable families and households across the country. This is not a regime that knows how to run a modern economy. And perhaps most importantly, only a few short years ago, the MEK was discredited widely in the United States and Europe, the subject of a long disinformation campaign. But that situation has changed dramatically. Today, the MEK is recognized as a legitimate political organization representing a large section of the Iranian population. In sum, the heroic protests we witnessed last year are part of larger trends that are strengthening the opposition and weakening the regime in Tehran. A democratic future for Iran is closer today than before. Please know that all freedom-loving people the world over stand with you. Thank you very much.